So we have a shocking story out of Ohio. A young Amish man, technically a teenager, has been charged with the murder of a 28-year-old Amish woman. And according to police, this young man has made a confession of a sort. And I'll tell you what I mean by that in a minute. First of all, who is this person? Who is this victim? We also have some comments from another Amish person who was living with this person accused of murder, and additionally was the one who happened to find her body. So guys, this is out of Meigs County, Ohio, which is home to a small Amish community. The report is from WSAZ. A man has been arrested in connection with a suspicious death first reported on Thursday, March 13th. Samuel Hostetler was arrested on Monday, May 5, for the murder of Rosanna Kinzinger, 28, of Pomeroy, Ohio. Kinzinger's death was ruled suspicious on Thursday, March 13th, which was the day that her body was found, by deputies with the Meigs County Sheriff's Office as they responded to the scene along Dye Road in Rutland, Ohio. This is a community, this is actually in the southeast kind of corner of Ohio. Since then, Meigs County Sheriff's Office detectives have served numerous search warrants, conducted interviews, and processed evidence collected from the scene. So this is about 2 months later, not quite 2 months later, that they've made this arrest. Detectives followed up on tips, leads, and rumors that they say helped to identify Hostetler as a person of interest in the case. So they did an autopsy on Rosanna Kinzinger's body, and they said the results were inconclusive. Okay, but the work of this sheriff's department has led them to charge Samuel L. Hostetler with murder. So who is Samuel L. Hostetler? Well, we have a photo of Hostetler released by the sheriff's department, and we have a few details from various reports that have come out. This is a very fresh story. This is just being reported in the past 24 hours, really. You see his photo here wearing very typical Amish dress. Now, a quick comment on wording. Now, a lot of the stories that have come out have just referred to him as like man arrested in woman's murder, kind of very generic headlines. But if you read the stories and you look at the evidence, you can tell that this is clearly an Amish community and Amish people involved. And those details are included in some of these reports. So I describe him here as an Amish teen because based on all the details I've gathered, that sounds like the most accurate description of this person. First of all, Samuel L. Hostetler is 18 years old. So he's a teen, but according to the law, he's also an adult. Hostetler has a typical Amish appearance, as you can see, and this is a name very common among the Amish. And then there's this detail that from the Meigs County Sheriff, this is reported in WTAP, Sheriff Fitch says that Hostetler is originally from an Amish community in Kentucky, and that he moved to Meigs County sometime in the fall of 2024. So that's interesting. Why did he move here, you might be wondering. Now, there's one detail about that. Now, at his age, just 18 years old, it may very well be that Hostetler had not been baptized yet into the Amish church. That typically starts to happen around that age, 18, 19, 20, 21, is when the young Amish people make that decision. Now, why did he move from Kentucky to Ohio to a very small Amish community? According to Young Center Amish Studies estimates, this was just a 30-person Amish community as of last year. So that's a very small community. Not many people there, probably just a handful of households, 5, 6, 7 households maybe. Well, the reason he might have moved is that when Amish youth in smaller communities are at an age when they're looking for a future wife or a husband, by necessity, just being in a smaller community, you may have to look outside your community, because all the people there may be your relatives. And maybe that was the case here. So I'm not going to go too far into speculation here, but maybe there was a pre-existing relationship which led to him moving there. Maybe not. It's not super relevant to the story, but that's something that may raise people's eyebrows, so I wanted to explain what might be going on there. So as I mentioned at the start, Hostetler apparently has made a confession, and you can see this in the court documents as well. It's been referenced. But it's not exactly confessing to intentionally killing Rosanna Kinzinger. Now, in one report, it says investigators said in court records that Hostetler confessed to putting a blanket over Kinzinger's head. I'm sorry, this is kind of graphic, while the pair were in bed together. When he rolled her over, he told investigators she was not alive. So you see what I mean? That's not exactly the same as saying, I killed her, okay? At least in how it's worded in that report. Now, that's a secondhand report. So what I did is I looked a little bit closer. I went into the court records of the Meigs County Courthouse website where this is publicly available to get the exact wording that was used in the document. So this is actually slightly different, somewhat more specific as to what happened. This is the relevant bit, to wit. This information is believed to be true and accurate because Samuel Hostetler did confess to Sergeant Tracy and Lieutenant Campbell that he did have sexual intercourse with Rosanna Kinzinger and put a blanket over her head during, and when he was finished, he rolled her over and realized she was not alive. So those are not the verbatim words of Samuel Hostetler. We don't have those. I assume that the investigators do have that in recorded form or some other, more substantial form. But is this a confession that Hostetler intentionally murdered Kinzinger? As it's worded there, after the act concluded, he, quote, realized she was not alive. I mean, is it possible this was an accident? I'm not saying it is, but, I'm just saying this. If you see headlines, you see this in reports, he confessed, because that's going to be out there. What did he actually say? Okay, we have limited information. Let's keep that in mind. But based on what we have, it's not like he said, yeah, I wanted to kill her and I did. It's a little more gray area. In any case, it's not for me to judge or guess at. But of course, the investigators know more about what happened, more details. Whatever he did or whatever they know is enough for them to bring this charge. In any case, we're going to get more details at some point. There's a preliminary hearing coming up next week already. I mentioned there was a person who was actually Hostetler's housemate for the period both before and after the alleged murder happened. Because keep in mind, this happened back in March, and here we are in May, and he's just getting arrested at the beginning of May. So almost 2 months have passed. This is also from WSAZ. They spoke with Mose Troyer. Mose Troyer lives in the Amish community where the victim and suspect lived. He tells WSAZ the suspect is from Kentucky and had been living with him for a few months. Troyer says back on March 13th, people in the community noticed they hadn't seen Kinzinger all day. Troyer says he went into her home that night and found her dead. He also says her goat was inside the home. He says he called 911. Troyer says this was scary when it happened in March and also disturbing to think he'd been living for weeks afterward with the person who ended up being charged. Troyer says he wishes he could ask him why. So it sounds like Troyer is pretty convinced that Hostetler did something bad here. Furthermore, Meigs County Sheriff Scott Finch had some things to say about Rosanna Kinzinger. And this is from a statement that was released on Facebook by the sheriff's office. This case was such a tragedy to those who knew Rosanna. She was a beloved individual in her community. Detectives have worked around the clock searching for answers and were able to get those answers. Hopefully this investigation helps bring some closure to the victim's family, and on behalf of the sheriff's office, we offer our deepest condolences. I'll have that statement linked in the description as I usually do with sources that I use in these stories. So guys, this case going forward, what can we say? I mean, obviously, I'm going to state the obvious thing. This is bizarre. This is tragic. This is very sad. This is shocking. You wouldn't expect, obviously this to happen in an Amish community, allegedly by another Amish person. Over a year ago, we had the awful case in northwestern Pennsylvania of a young mother being killed, allegedly by an outsider. Now, the Amish are not immune to having murderers in their communities. However, the number of murders committed by Amish people is very low. I'm aware of only 3 Amish murderers. They were all men. One of them you might know. One was named Eli Weaver, who conspired to have his wife killed in Ohio. There was a movie made about it. Another was an Amish minister in Missouri who poisoned his wife about 20 years ago. And then maybe the saddest one in the early 90s, there was an Amish man named Ed Gingrich who had severe mental health issues and ended up killing his wife in Pennsylvania in 1993. Those are the only ones I know of, I'm aware of. Have there been others? I mean, in the hundreds of years of Amish history, I'd be surprised if there hadn't been, but those are the more contemporary stories. The point is they're quite rare and uncommon. So if this is something that Samuel Hostetler did, he would be in rare company. Just a few more additional details. Hostetler was arraigned on Tuesday morning in Meigs County, and he was given a $1 million bond. He wasn't given the 10% surety on the bond, so it's like a full cash bond. In other words, it's quite unlikely he's going to be able to get out on bail. Secondly, I'm not sure why this is, but he's actually being held in a jail in a neighboring county, in Gallia County. And his preliminary hearing, which I mentioned earlier, is scheduled for May 13th, so less than a week from now as I record this. So guys, I don't have a whole lot more to add than that. I mean, besides the obvious that this is a horrible story, and you feel badly for this young woman in this community and her family. I mean, it sounds like she was a beloved member of the community, and what in the world happened that she ended up like this. As we get more details, I'm going to try to keep you updated on this. You can check here on the channel, also at AmishAmerica.com. Sometimes I write about things. I'm not able to make a full video about them, especially if it's like a smaller detail. But thanks a lot for watching, guys. Hit the like and subscribe buttons, and I will talk to you soon.